Romans chapter 11 today. And again, I would encourage you to read this chapter if you have not, to hit pause and read it and come back. And Paul is continuing this discussion on faith. And if you recall, the Israelites would have certainly thought that they were righteous, made righteous with God because of their ethnicity, because of who they were born into. And Paul is stressing it's not because you're a Jew, it's not because you follow the law, it is, or attempt to follow the law, it is strictly through faith. Faith in the promise, faith in Jesus. So we have this faith concept. So Paul starts chapter 11 by asking, so therefore has God rejected his people? And his response is, by no means. He did not reject his people, and goes on and talks about Elijah. And there was a time in Elijah's life where he felt he was the only faithful person, the only one following God. And God said no, because there was a remnant. I had a remnant of 7,000 people, a remnant chosen by grace. So there's always been God's faithfulness to keep a remnant through faith. And then quotes in verses 8 through 10, a quote from the Torah, a quote from the prophets, and a quote from the Psalm to stress this remnants. And then transitions in verse 11 and following, this illustration of an olive tree, that the Gentiles, salvation has come to the Gentiles, and that they have been grafted in. But Paul is stressing that there is a place for Israel, that they can be included as well through faith, and that Paul is saying that Jesus, or God, has grafted in the Gentiles with the goal to make the Jews jealous, that they will turn back through faith back to God. And he goes on to challenge the Gentiles, saying, but because God has chosen this, God has done this, don't be arrogant. Don't certainly realize that it is not them who've done anything, but it's God, that the root is what supports them. And that if God has broken off the Jews and the Israelites from this olive tree, by all means, he could certainly do that to them as well. So this concept of being faithful, remaining faithful, having fear, and Paul is stressing that there's always this chance, and the Jews can always be grafted back in, and that God can do that, and it's all through faith. And but yeah, this challenge not to boast in your faith. And then Paul ends 25 and following with a somewhat confusing section that talks about the future of Israel. And there's a lot written on what is the future of Israel, as God's chosen. And is this talking about ethnic Israel? Is this section talking about Israel of faith? And we really don't know. We don't know what the answer is. I do believe if there is a future for ethnic Israel, it is through faith in Jesus. So whatever that looks like, I don't know. And but there, like I said, there's a lot out there discussing this. And it just, in verse 33, oh, the depth of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God, how unsearchable are his judgments and how inscrutable his ways. So it's a mystery. And our tendency is we want to figure out God. We want to totally understand why he does what he does or doesn't do what he doesn't do. And Paul is saying God's riches and his wisdom and his knowledge, it's a mystery. We don't know. but acknowledges for from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be the glory forever. So the importance of realizing God is God. God is in control. God has a plan. And these last 3 chapters or 4 chapters have talked a lot about God choosing, God hardening, and God's election. And it can cause a lot of issues for people, that God chooses who he chooses and hardens who he hardens. And it is hard, but we must remember that God is God and we are not, and that this faith in Jesus is available to everyone, and that God desires that all would be saved. So I hope you are keeping up in Romans. Romans is obviously one of the big books that Paul has written. It's his theological treaty, really. So keep digging in, and there's stuff that, yes, I think makes sense, and there's things that are challenging, but this faith, being made righteous, being justified through faith in Jesus is the key to Romans. So again, have a great day. Let me know if you're learning anything, what God's speaking to you as you look at his word. And we'll see you on here with Romans 12 tomorrow. God bless.